My fiancé shoved a stack of papers across the kitchen table and said, calmly but coldly, "Your retirement fund becomes ours. My $45,000 of credit card debt becomes yours." I remember the sound first, the soft slap of paper against wood, 23 pages, neatly clipped, professionally printed, like it was something reasonable, like it wasn't a financial weapon pointed straight at my chest. I smiled, not because I thought it was funny, but because my body didn't know how else to react. Then I slid the papers back toward him. He didn't smile back. Instead, his voice cracked sharp and loud, echoing off the cabinets. "Sign it or the wedding is dead." The words hung there, heavy and final. I looked at the man I had loved for 2 years. The man I was supposed to marry in 3 months. The man who had kissed my forehead that morning before work and asked what we wanted for dinner tonight. And I said quietly, "Then let it die." I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and walked out of his apartment without looking back. That night, while I was sitting alone in my place, still wearing my shoes, still feeling the echo of my own heartbeat in my ears, my phone buzzed with a message I didn't expect. It wasn't from him. It was from someone he never thought would contact him. I didn't know yet what that call would reveal. I didn't know yet that the prenup wasn't just unfair. It was a trap. And I didn't know yet that by walking away, I had just saved myself from inheriting a disaster that would have destroyed my future. I'm 29 years old. 6 weeks ago, I learned something most people don't realize until it's too late. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the only power move that actually works. At the time, I thought I was ending an engagement. I had no idea I was stepping out of the blast radius of something far darker. And that realization didn't come until later, when the phone rang, and the first sentence made my hands start to shake. I was 27 when I met him, and at the time, my life felt steady. Not exciting in a movie kind of way, but stable in a way that made me sleep well at night. I had a decent job, a small but comfortable apartment, routines I trusted, and a long-term plan I actually followed. I was the kind of woman who packed lunch instead of ordering out, who tracked her expenses in a spreadsheet, who had been maxing out her retirement account since she was 23. Not because I was rich, but because I believed in future me. He was nothing like that. We met at a mutual friend's cookout on a warm summer afternoon. I remember him laughing loudly by the grill, beer in hand, telling some ridiculous story that had everyone leaning in. He noticed me watching and walked over like we already knew each other. No hesitation, no awkwardness. We talked for hours that day, about music, travel, stupid childhood memories. He was charming in a reckless way, spontaneous, always chasing the next experience. He told me he hated routines. I told him I loved them. Somehow, instead of clashing, it felt like balance. We started dating almost immediately. The first year was easy, fun. He was the kind of man who surprised me with last-minute road trips, midnight ice cream runs, random concerts on a Tuesday night. He made me feel lighter, less rigid, and I liked that version of myself around him. Money came up early, but only in passing. He joked about being bad with numbers. I joked about being boring. When I paid for things more often, I told myself it didn't matter. I made more. I had savings. He always said he'd catch up eventually. When he proposed 6 months before everything fell apart, it felt right. He got down on one knee in a small park near my apartment, hands shaking, voice cracking. I said yes without hesitation. I believed him when he said we were a team now. His family welcomed me quickly. His father was calm, reserved, the kind of man who spoke carefully. His mother was warm, affectionate, always asking if I'd eaten. They treated me like I already belonged. I thought that meant something. Looking back, there were signs, small ones. The way he changed the subject when bills came up. The way packages arrived almost daily, boxes he'd rush to bring inside. The vague answers when I asked about his credit cards. It's under control. I've got a system. I wanted to believe him. We set the wedding date, 3 months out, deposits paid, venue, photographer, catering. I covered most of it without making a big deal. Love makes you generous. Sometimes it makes you blind. When he suggested a prenup 2 weeks before everything exploded, I didn't panic. I actually thought it was mature, logical, protection for both of us. I had no idea what he was really protecting. And I had no idea that the man I planned to marry wasn't just careless with money. He was hiding something much bigger. After the engagement, things started to feel heavier. Not bad enough to call it wrong, but different enough that my body noticed before my mind did. He became tense whenever money came up, not angry, defensive, like every question was an accusation. If I asked about splitting utilities, he'd laugh it off and say, "Why are you stressing? We're getting married." If I mentioned budgets for the wedding, he'd sigh and say I was killing the vibe. His friends didn't help. Whenever we went out with them, there were jokes, little comments that landed wrong. "Must be nice having a fiancée who's good with money." Or, "You lucked out, man, she's responsible." He'd smile, but his jaw would tighten, just slightly. At first, I thought it was pride, insecurity, things couples work through. Then his family started asking questions. His mom would casually mention rising costs, how stressful everything was these days. His dad once asked me, quietly, if the wedding budget was manageable. I assured him it was fine. I meant it. I had planned for it. What I didn't know was that those questions weren't random. There were nights I'd notice him scrolling on his phone, eyes narrowed, thumb moving fast. If I asked what he was doing, he'd say work stuff and turn the screen away. Packages kept arriving. Shoes, electronics, things he didn't need. Once I asked directly about his credit cards. He laughed too quickly. "It's not bad. Everyone has debt." When I pressed, he kissed my forehead and said, "Trust me." And I did, because trust is easier than confrontation when you're in love. The week before he brought up the prenup, we had our first real argument. Not explosive, just cold. I suggested we sit down and look at finances together before marriage. Joint planning. Transparency. He accused me of not believing in him. "I thought you accepted me," he said, arms crossed. "This feels like you're judging me." I apologized. For wanting clarity. For pushing. For making him feel small. That should have been my wake-up call. When he finally said the word prenup, I actually felt relief. A document meant honesty, boundaries, protection. I didn't know that he and his lawyer had been planning something else entirely. I didn't know that this wasn't about fairness. It was about control. And the moment he put those papers in front of me, every small discomfort I'd ignored finally lined up into something undeniable. But at that point, I still didn't understand how deep it went. Not yet. He asked me to come over on a Tuesday night, said he wanted to go over something important. His tone was careful, controlled, like he'd rehearsed it. I remember standing in his kitchen, the smell of takeout still in the air, his laptop closed on the counter like it was hiding a secret. Then he slid the document toward me. "Just read it," he said. I sat at the table and started flipping pages. By page 3, my chest felt tight. By page 10, my hands were cold. By page 23, my blood pressure was screaming in my ears. Every paragraph took something from me. My retirement accounts became marital assets, subject to equal division. My savings, same thing. Everything I had worked for, planned for, protected for my future, suddenly belonged to us. And then I got to the section about debt. His credit card balances, which I had only recently learned were over $45,000, would become shared marital responsibility upon marriage. I reread it 3 times, hoping I was misunderstanding. I looked up at him. He was leaning against the counter, arms crossed, watching me like he was bracing for impact. "So let me get this straight," I said slowly, setting the papers down. "Everything I've saved becomes ours, and everything you've messed up becomes ours too." "That's how marriage works," he replied, flat and dismissive. "We share everything, the good and the bad." I felt something snap inside me, not rage, clarity. "No," I said, "that's not marriage. That's getting played." He scoffed. "You're being dramatic." "I'm being realistic," I shot back. "You're trying to legally obligate me to pay off your debt while claiming half of what I've saved. That's not sharing. That's taking." He pushed off the counter, voice rising. "You know what? This is exactly why I needed this in writing. I knew you'd get selfish about money." Selfish. The word landed hard. "I'm selfish for not wanting to inherit $45,000 of your credit card debt?" "It's not that much when you spread it out," he said quickly. "It's $45,000, I replied, "and I'm guessing it's probably more than that, right?" He didn't answer. Silence filled the room, thick and damning. I stood up, heart pounding. "I'm not signing this." He stepped toward the door, blocking it. "Then we need to compromise." "A compromise is we each keep our own assets and our own debts." "That's not fair," he snapped. "You make more than me." "That's not my fault." "So you're just going to abandon me with this debt?" "It was your debt before me," I said quietly. "It'll be your debt without me." His face changed. The pleading vanished. Anger took its place. He grabbed the prenup and shoved it into my chest. "Your retirement fund becomes ours. My $45,000 of credit card mess becomes yours. That's the deal. Sign it or the wedding is dead." I took the papers, smiled, and handed them right back. Then let it die. I walked past him toward the door. He grabbed my arm. Wait, can we just talk? We just did, I said, pulling free. You tried to trap me. There's nothing left to say. I love you, he said, voice cracking. I turned, looked at him one last time. I loved you, but I'm not sure you ever loved me, or just what I could do for you. I left, and this time I didn't hesitate. I didn't cry when I got home. That surprised me. I sat on the edge of my bed, jacket still on, keys still in my hand, staring at the wall like my brain needed time to catch up with my body. My heart was racing, but my thoughts were strangely calm, clear. Like something heavy had been lifted, even though everything I'd planned for the next year had just collapsed. Around 8 that night, my phone buzzed, then buzzed again and again. Texts, calls, voicemails. I can't believe you did this. We need to talk. You're making a huge mistake. Everyone is going to know you're the one who ruined this. I didn't respond. The next morning, my alarm went off like any other workday. I got dressed. I went to work. I did my job. The normalcy felt surreal, like I was watching myself from a distance. By Thursday evening, I made a decision. I called the wedding venue first, explained calmly that the engagement was over. They were surprisingly understanding. Because we were more than 60 days out, we'd get most of the deposit back, minus a small cancellation fee. I told them to process it. Then I called the photographer. Same deal. Then the caterer. I sat at my kitchen table with a calculator and my bank statements. I had paid for about 70% of the deposits. Still, I split everything evenly. 50-50. Clean, fair. I sent him a text breaking it all down. Your portion of the venue refund, $2,800. Photography, $600. Catering, $1,200. Total, $4,600. Checks will arrive in 2 to 3 weeks. He called immediately. I let it ring. Then a text. We need to talk face to face. I replied once. There's nothing to talk about. Wedding's canceled. Deposits are being refunded. You can't just cancel everything without discussing it with me. You gave me an ultimatum. I chose. I didn't think you'd actually walk away. That's your problem, not mine. I blocked his number after that. I truly believed that was the end of it. I was wrong. Friday evening, my phone rang. His mother's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. I owed them honesty. Her voice sounded exhausted. I heard about what happened. Can you tell me what really went down? He's been crying and won't give us straight answers. I told her everything. The prenup, the debt, the ultimatum. She went quiet. At least $45,000, she finally said. Oh my God, we didn't know it was that bad. I'm so sorry, she continued softly. I don't blame you for walking away. That's not okay. Her father got on the phone next. He sounded shaken. We're going to have a serious talk with him. This isn't how we raised him. Hearing that mattered more than I expected. It made me feel sane, grounded. Saturday was quiet. I cleaned my apartment, prepped meals, tried to breathe. Then, around 9 that night, an unknown number lit up my phone. I almost ignored it. Something made me answer. The voice on the other end of the line wasn't his. It was older, calm, controlled. The kind of voice that didn't waste words. Is this her? The man asked. Yes, I said, my stomach tightening. Who's calling? I'm his father's business partner. We need to talk about your ex. My heart dropped straight into my chest. What about him? There was a pause, just long enough to tell me this wasn't going to be small. He took out that credit card debt in his father's name. Identity theft. We only found out tonight when a collections agency called his cell phone. I sat down hard on my couch. What? He's been dodging their calls for months. They tracked down his father when the payments stopped coming. He didn't know about any of it. I felt lightheaded. The kitchen, the prenup, the debt numbers, all of it replayed in my head in fast, disjointed flashes. His father is filing a police report Monday morning, the man continued. He wanted you to know because he feels guilty, thinks maybe your ex was trying to pull you into this so he could hide it. How much is it really? I asked, my voice barely steady. $72,000, he said, across 4 cards, all in his father's name. I stared at the wall. $72,000. Identity theft, fraud. He wasn't just irresponsible, he was a criminal. He's been making minimum payments using borrowed money, the man added, just enough to keep the creditors from escalating. But it's spiraled. His father is pressing charges. He doesn't have a choice legally. I swallowed hard. Thank you for telling me. You made the right call, he said gently. Take care of yourself. When the line went dead, I didn't move for a long time. I just sat there, letting the reality settle into my bones. If I had signed that prenup, I would have been legally tied to a fraud case I didn't even know existed. Sunday morning, a text came from his mother. "Did his father's partner call you?" "Yes," I replied. "Last night." "I'm so sorry you were dragged into this," she wrote. "We had no idea how bad it was." "I'm just glad I found out before the wedding," I texted back. "So are we," she said. "I love my son, but what he did is unforgivable." Around noon, my best friend called. We met for lunch. I told her everything. She shook her head slowly. "You didn't dodge a bullet," she said. "You dodged a nuke." Monday afternoon, an email landed in my inbox. Subject line: "Please read this." I almost deleted it. Curiosity won. It was long, rambling, full of apologies and excuses. He claimed he planned to pay his father back, that things spiraled, that he never meant to hurt anyone, that he loved me, that he needed me. I read every word. Then I deleted it without replying. Tuesday, his father called. He apologized. He sounded broken, told me they'd filed the police report. An investigation was opening. This was going to get ugly. And suddenly, the weight of what I'd escaped finally hit me. The quiet after the truth was louder than any argument we'd ever had. Once the shock wore off, once the phone calls stopped, and the explanations ended, I was left alone with the weight of it all. Not just the betrayal, but the realization of how close I'd come to losing everything I'd built. My future, my stability, my sense of safety. That week, sleep became optional. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying moments I'd brushed off. The packages, the deflection, the way my questions had been turned into accusations. I felt stupid, not because I trusted him, but because I doubted myself. I kept asking the same question over and over. How did I not see this? There was guilt, too, a heavy, irrational kind. I felt guilty for walking away, guilty for not staying to help him, guilty for choosing myself when someone I loved was clearly broken. I wondered if that made me cold, or selfish, or exactly the person he'd accused me of being. I stopped answering texts from friends asking how I was doing. I didn't want sympathy. I didn't want reassurance. I wanted silence. I wanted my nervous system to calm down. One night, I opened my banking app and just stared at my numbers, my retirement accounts, my savings, all still there, untouched, safe. And instead of relief, I felt grief, because protecting myself had cost me a future I thought I was building with someone else. That was the hardest part, accepting that the version of him I loved wasn't real, or at least wasn't complete. I cried then, quietly, not dramatic, just tears slipping down while I sat on my kitchen floor, arms wrapped around myself, trying to remember who I was before everything revolved around us. That night I realized something else. If I had stayed, if I had signed those papers out of fear of being alone, I wouldn't have been saving him. I would have been sacrificing myself. And that thought scared me more than being single ever could. The turning point didn't come with fireworks or a dramatic confrontation. It came quietly, in a moment that felt almost too small to matter. I was sitting in my car after work, hands on the steering wheel, engine off, just breathing. For the first time since everything collapsed, I wasn't replaying conversations or imagining alternate endings. My mind was still. And in that stillness, a thought surfaced, clear and steady. I didn't lose anything real. That realization hit harder than the shock ever had. I hadn't lost a partner who respected me. I hadn't lost a future built on honesty. I hadn't lost love that was mutual and safe. What I lost was an illusion, carefully maintained by someone who needed my stability more than he valued my trust. I thought about the prenup again, not with anger this time, but clarity. That document wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. It was a test, a line in the sand. He had shown me exactly how he saw me, not as an equal, but as a solution to his problems. And I had said no. For the first time, I felt proud of myself. Not for being strong in some dramatic, cinematic way, but for being quiet and firm when it mattered most. For walking away without screaming. For choosing long-term peace over short-term comfort. That night, I went home and did something symbolic. I deleted the folder on my computer labeled Wedding. Guest lists, seating charts, dress inspiration, all of it. Gone. It felt like closing a door without slamming it. I stopped checking my phone for updates about the investigation, stopped asking his mother how things were going, not because I didn't care, but because it wasn't my burden anymore. I had spent so long carrying emotional weight that wasn't mine to hold. Letting go felt like breathing again. The fallout didn't explode all at once. It unraveled slowly, painfully, the way truth usually does when it no longer has anywhere to hide. I heard bits and pieces through his mother at first, short, careful updates. His father had pressed charges, not out of anger, but out of necessity. His lawyer had made it clear there was no other option if he wanted to protect himself from being legally responsible for the debt. The investigation moved forward whether anyone was ready for it or not. His reputation collapsed quietly. Friends who had once defended him stopped calling. People he'd borrowed money from started asking questions. Stories didn't line up. Excuses contradicted each other. The charming, carefree guy everyone thought they knew didn't survive contact with paperwork and sworn statements. He moved back in with his parents, not as a reset, as a consequence. His father barely spoke to him, not because he didn't love him, but because every conversation reopened the same wound. Betrayal from your own child cuts differently. His mother tried to keep the peace, tried to mediate, tried to hold the family together with empathy and exhaustion, but even she sounded tired when we spoke. I didn't celebrate any of it. There was no satisfaction in watching someone I once loved hit rock bottom. What I felt instead was distance, emotional separation, like observing a storm after you've already found shelter. The legal process dragged on, charges filed, restitution discussed, probation likely, jail possible but unlikely for a first offense tied to family. Still, the damage was permanent. His father's credit took a hit, his business relationships strained, trust shattered. And through all of it, I stayed silent. I didn't defend myself publicly. I didn't correct rumors. I didn't post cryptic messages online. I didn't need to. The truth didn't require my participation anymore. It spoke loudly enough on its own. The last I heard, he tried to explain himself to mutual friends, tried to frame it as desperation, as pressure, as love gone wrong. Most of them stopped responding. Consequences don't need drama to be effective. They just need time. Meanwhile, my life kept moving. I went on a few dates, nothing serious, no rush. I focused on work, on my routines, on rebuilding trust with myself. I noticed how calm my apartment felt, how my finances felt secure again, how my future belonged to me. Walking away hadn't destroyed me. It had protected me. 6 weeks have passed since the night I left his apartment and didn't look back. The investigation is still ongoing. The legal consequences will play out the way they're supposed to. He's facing charges for identity theft and fraud. Probation is likely. Restitution is inevitable. The fallout in his family is something I wouldn't wish on anyone, even now. People have asked me if I feel bad. The honest answer is no. I feel sad that it happened. I feel empathy for the pain his parents are carrying. But I don't feel guilty for choosing myself. I don't feel regret for walking away from a situation that would have financially and emotionally destroyed me. Because here's the truth, no one tells you until you've lived it. Love doesn't require you to sacrifice your future to save someone who refuses to be honest about their present. If he had loved me the way he claimed, he wouldn't have tried to trap me into inheriting his problems. He wouldn't have turned my responsibility into leverage. He wouldn't have asked me to sign away my security under the threat of losing the relationship. What he loved wasn't me. He loved the stability I represented, the safety net, the way my life could have fixed his. And I almost let that happen. The prenup he shoved across that table was the best thing that never happened to me. It forced the truth into the open before vows, before legal entanglement, before a shared last name turned his mess into my responsibility. I kept my retirement fund. I stayed debt-free. I kept my future intact. And I learned to trust my instincts when something feels off, even if love tells you to ignore it. Walking away didn't make me weak. It proved I knew my worth. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't fighting for the relationship. It's choosing not to be trapped by it.